I used to think love was a kind of shelter, a steady roof that didn't creak when the wind picked up. My wife Nora and I were never dramatic. No plates thrown, no stormy threats. We were a ritual kind of couple. 2 coffees at 7:15 a.m., a kiss by the door, a text at lunch that said, "You good?" and a thumbs up emoji in return. It was so normal it felt permanent. We met 9 years ago in a bookstore after a minor collision that sent her iced latte into a stack of travel guides. I apologized. She laughed. We cleaned it together with napkins that dissolved into paper snow. 6 months later, I moved my books into her apartment, and by the following summer, we were picking out chair fabric we'd jointly pretend to like forever. Nora designed interiors for restaurants and co-working lofts, clean lines, soft textures. I worked IT at a hospital, clean logs, hard truths. We were a loop, reliable, polite, cozy. Looking back, I can't pinpoint the exact second a hairline crack appeared. I know it wasn't fireworks. It was soft, quiet, like a sweater loosening somewhere at the hem, a thread you don't notice until it finds your wrist. It began with laughter, not the belly kind, not the laugh that bends her at the waist. It was lighter exhale and smile and eyes that went sideways. She started working later. "Client presentation," she'd say, kissing the air near my cheek. "We're redoing a bistro owner's Impossible." She'd send me photos, mood boards with walnut tables, matte gold fixtures, chairs I'd never sit on, but would admire from a distance. The pictures were real. The details were right. I didn't question them. I didn't question her. Then the phone turned face down. It's a cliche for a reason. The first time she did it without thinking, chatting about a new supplier while sliding her screen against the table like she was tucking in a baby. I noticed and did nothing. The second time, I noticed and swallowed. The third time, I noticed and told myself there had to be a non-paranoid explanation. Everybody sets their phone face down sometimes, right? Light glare, courtesy, battery overheating, pick your placebo. There were new clothes too. She said the firm wanted a sleeker look, more presence. She'd never cared about brand names, and suddenly she knew the language of hemlines and Italian stitching. When I told her she looked beautiful, she squeezed my hand and said, "You always make me feel seen." Those words tasted sweet. They also slid past something in me that was already bracing. 2 weeks later, a name appeared on her Apple Watch when I brought her coffee. Up, and a gray bubble preview that said, "Still thinking about last night." She lifted her wrist so fast the coffee bled onto the saucer. "Client," she said too quickly. "A for Ariana, the bistro owner." She laughed. It sounded like thin glass. I am not proud of what I did next. If I could frame it more nobly, I would. But the truth is plain. I waited until she left for yoga, and I checked the iPad we both used for recipes and streaming shows. Same Apple ID, same messages. It wasn't Ariana. Asher. A number saved with no last name. At first it was airlight memes about paint colors, jokes about restaurants that confused industrial with unfinished. Harmless. Then the orbit pulled closer. Asher. I keep replaying the way you looked at the sample board, like you could see the finished room already. Nora. That's just my job. Asher. No, that's your magic. Nora. Stop. She wrote, stop. But the messages kept going. Pictures of tile, a photo of her coffee with a thumb in frame. His, a midnight chat about music. Then 1:37 a.m. Asher. I wish we were still on the roof. The city felt small, like we could pick it up and put it in our pockets. Nora. You're trouble. Asher. You're already in it. My throat tightened the way it does when a doctor says your name before reading the chart. There were no explicit photos, no body parts, no forensic evidence. But there was intimacy so dense it changed the air in our house. A joke became a rope became a bridge became a door with my name scratched off. I told myself I would confront her that night. I didn't. I grilled chicken because it had already marinated. I folded laundry because it was there. She came home tired and pretty and grateful for dinner. You're good to me, she said, touching the back of my neck with 2 fingers. The spot warmed with muscle memory. I felt like the worst version of myself. Silent, watching, already bargaining with a ghost. The next days became an experiment in stamina. How much could I absorb without breaking? There were clues everywhere. She hummed when she texted him, a tune I didn't recognize. She wore lipstick to the grocery store. She placed her phone behind the toaster while we cooked, as if stainless steel could protect what needed hiding. Saturday morning, she said she had a site visit that would run long. I said I'd paint the hallway. "Save some for me," she said, rolling her eyes in a joke we'd used 100 times. I smiled, watched her leave, and followed 10 minutes later. I parked half a block from the address in her calendar. It was a warehouse undergoing metamorphosis. Scaffolding ribs, a skeleton of a bar. Through a second-floor window, I saw movement. I didn't want to be the man who watches through windows. I became him anyway. Nora appeared with a roll of plans. A man lifted them from her hands. Tall, a little younger than me, hair too long for a hard hat. He wasn't movie star handsome. He was plausible. That made it worse. They leaned over a table. They laughed. He touched the small of her back. The gesture was quick, habitual. She didn't flinch. She didn't step away. A truck drove by, blocking my view, then coughing out a ribbon of diesel. When it cleared, I saw them at the stairwell. Her head tilted like a flower when it finds light. He kissed her. Not a first kiss, not a test. A kiss that knew where to land. There are moments so loud that sound turns off. I remember the hum of my car's air vents and the way my hands forgot where to go. I didn't storm in. I didn't honk. I didn't take pictures. I watched long enough to remove all doubt, and then I drove to a grocery store parking lot and stared at a cart return like it had answers. People like to imagine they will be cinematic when betrayed, brave, sharp, articulate. I felt small, not weak, just reduced, like a sauce left too long over heat. I didn't confront her that day. Or the next. I slept next to her and counted her breaths. I made coffee, and she thanked me. She showered, and I pressed my forehead to the cool hallway wall until she finished. Meanwhile, my mind kept assembling a file the way I'd assemble a server incident report. Date, time, behavior, correlation, root cause, mitigation. It sounds robotic. It was survival. On Wednesday, I called in sick and met a therapist named Hannah because I suddenly needed a stranger who wouldn't say, "I told you so," or "maybe it's not what you think." Hannah had iron gray hair and a gentle voice that didn't crack. I sat on a couch and said the words out loud. "My wife is cheating on me." Hannah nodded like an EMT who'd seen every kind of injury. "What do you want to do with that sentence?" she asked. I stared at the plant by the window. Its leaves were glossy, fake. "I don't know," I said. "Part of me wants to burn the house down. Part of me wants to rewind to before I knew." "Neither is possible." She gave me homework. Breathe, don't snoop, don't confront without sleep. Write what you need to say and say it once without the temptation to litigate every detail. "Your goal isn't to catch," she said. "It's to choose. Catching is about them. Choosing is about you." That night, I tried to choose. I failed and opened the iPad again. The messages were more careful now, more work adjacent. Maybe she suspected. Maybe he advised her. At 12:08 a.m., after I'd put the iPad back exactly where it was and pretended to sleep, her phone lit the room with a square of light. She tiptoed into the hallway. I listened to the floorboards count her steps. On Friday, I left work early. I made a pasta she loved and set the table like we used to when dinner was an event. Cloth napkins, the good plates. When she walked in, she looked startled like a deer glimpsing headlights through trees. "What's the occasion?" she asked. "Us," I said. The word tasted wrong. We ate like polite coworkers. I watched the way she lifted her fork and the way her eyes kept darting to the counter where her phone slept face down. I wanted to grab it and throw it against the wall, not because of the messages, but because of the muscle memory that had replaced our marriage. When the dishes were done, I wiped my hands on a towel and said, "Nora, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer the real question. Not the question that makes me look crazy." She leaned against the sink. "Okay. How long have you been seeing him?" Everything in the room stopped. The refrigerator motor paused like it didn't want to interrupt. Nora's face didn't change. It just emptied. She didn't pretend not to understand. She didn't ask who. Her eyes filled like someone racing to catch water in their hands. She started, then closed her mouth, then opened it again. I didn't mean for it to happen. I felt oddly relieved. The worst part was over. The words existed between us, and ghosts hate sunlight. How long? And I asked. She looked at the floor. A few months? Is it over? Silence is its own confession, she said finally, almost gently. I don't know. I nodded like I was in a meeting. Okay, I said. Here's what I need. I need you to tell me the truth once. No minimizing, no shifting, just facts so I can decide what to do with my life. She sank into a chair like her bones wanted the earth. She told me they met on a rooftop after a late-night meeting. There was wine. There was wind. She felt invisible at home, and dazzling at work. He admired the way she thought about space. The first kiss was stupid, the second inevitable, the third already a habit. She said she didn't sleep with him right away. She said it like it mattered, like there were moral discounts for delayed betrayal. Why didn't you tell me when it started to feel like more? I asked. Because telling you would have made it real, she said, and I kept thinking I would stop. I kept thinking it was just oxygen and I would go back underwater and be fine. Oxygen. Underwater. Fine. None of those words were about me. I wasn't a person in her sentence. I was a location. I told her I would sleep at a hotel. She nodded like a condemned woman who understands the ritual of the blindfold. I took a bag. I took my toothbrush. I didn't take our wedding photo from the bookshelf, but I thought about it. The way people in movies take a picture and slide it face down. At the hotel, the ice machine sounded like a small train. I lay in the unfamiliar bed and felt the familiar shape of grief curl beside me. I waited for rage. I tried to summon it. All I could feel was the quiet after a TV is turned off the room, still humming with the echo of what it used to hold. The next morning, Nora texted, "Please come home. Please talk to me. I will end it. I'm sorry. I am so sorry." I typed okay and didn't send it. I typed no and didn't send it. I typed nothing and put the phone face down. Now I understood the convenience of that choreography. Hannah told me to make decisions in daylight. So I drove to our house at 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday when neighbors watered lawns and dogs made circles on the sidewalk before committing to grass. Nora was at the table with a mug she wasn't drinking. Her hair was up. Her eyes looked like they'd been rinsed. "I ended it," she said before I sat down. "I told him he can't contact me." She slid her phone across the table like a weapon she was surrendering. "Block him," she said. "I don't trust myself yet. Block him so I don't have the option." I believed her. I also believed that belief wasn't the same thing as repair. We tried. For 3 weeks, we tried. We did dinners without screens. We did questions from a podcast about deepening intimacy. We did therapy with Hannah in a room that smelled like tea and faint lemon cleaner. We cried. We made lists of the firsts we'd had together. We took night walks and held hands like people rehearsing a role they wanted to keep. But I learned something I didn't want to learn. Forgiveness and trust don't travel at the same speed. I could forgive her in the way you forgive a storm for raining. I couldn't trust her yet, and trust is what you hang a life on. Without it, every silence is suspicious, every late text a flare, every smile a code you cannot read. The relapse arrived like a familiar thief who knew where we kept the spare key. It was a Thursday, which felt like a cosmic joke that had been the day of their rooftop. Nora said she needed to drop samples at the warehouse. She was gone 2 hours longer than the estimated 40 minutes. When she came back, she smelled like the outside air, a little like sawdust and a little like citrus, which didn't belong to any cleaner we owned. She showed me a receipt for coffee. She showed me 3 photos of tile laid in patterns. She smiled carefully. The smile didn't reach the part of her face that tells the truth when you're not paying attention. I didn't check her phone. I didn't need to. The body knows. That night, I lay awake and realized I'd reached a line I couldn't unknow. Maybe she hadn't seen him. Maybe she had. The point was rotten either way. I no longer trusted the story, even when it might be true. What does a marriage become when every maybe is a courtroom? It wasn't a dramatic ending. I didn't throw rings. No soundtrack swelled. On Saturday morning, I told her I was going to look at short-term rentals. She sat on the stairs with her hoodie sleeves pulled over her fists. "Is this it?" she asked. I think it has to be on," I said. Her face crumpled, not the delicate cry of a movie star, but the ugly human collapse of someone who has finally hit the ground. "I love you," she said. "That never changed." I believe she believed that. I also know love is not a permission slip. It doesn't cancel out what stands next to it. Love and betrayal can sit in the same room. Love just looks smaller when betrayal is standing up. I moved out quietly. I took my books, my clothes, the dumb mug with a chip that only I knew how to drink around. I left the wedding photo. She texted to ask if I wanted it, and I said she could keep it or toss it or pack it for some future version of us that might be able to look without bleeding. I didn't add, "I can't take care of your memories anymore." Divorce took months because even simple splits have complicated edges. There were no children, and the house was easier to sell than I thought. We kept it too perfect. We divided our things in a spreadsheet that made my chest ache with its rows. We were kind to each other, which felt both noble and perverse. The day we signed, she wore a sweater I'd bought her in Maine. We didn't comment on it. After, I walked to a diner I used to pass on my commute without ever going in. The waitress called me Han and set down eggs the color of afternoon. I ate like a person finishing a fast. I didn't feel free, I felt unhooked. Months later, I saw Asher at a supply store. I knew him before my brain provided the name. He looked narrower than in the window, like guilt had pinched him from both sides. He saw me, flinched, then straightened like a man remembering he practiced a speech in the mirror. "I'm sorry," he said. No preface, no hello. The words were so blunt I almost respected them. "For what?" I asked, because people should be precise when apologizing. "For," he gestured vaguely, a hand sketching a shape in the air. "For crossing a line that wasn't mine to cross." I nodded. "You didn't make promises to me," I said. It was true, it was also incomplete. He had known I existed and proceeded anyway. He had used doors I'd built. "If it helps," he said, we're not." He gave up. It was a mess. "I'm sorry." "It helps a little," I said, because it did, and because I wanted to be the kind of person who could tell the truth when the truth was small. I walked out lighter, not fixed, just a little less repaired by glue and a little more rebuilt by honesty. The first evening in my new apartment, I sat on the floor among boxes and listened to the radiator click to life. Across from me was a blank wall where a couch would go once I found one that didn't remind me of anything else. I made a new routine, a run before work, a real breakfast, a rule that the phone sleeps in the kitchen. I put a plant by the window and learned how to keep a living thing alive without making it responsible for my mood. Friends came in shifts. Some offered anger on my behalf. Some offered solutions made of whiskey. A few offered silence that held without trying to fix. My sister sent me a text that said, "You are not a failure. You just didn't get the ending you wrote in your head." I screenshotted it and read it like medication. On a Tuesday afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. The first instinct flared. Her? Him? But it was from the manager at the hospital cafeteria. They were piloting a compost program I'd suggested months earlier. Small, ordinary good thing. I wrote a memo, and while writing it, I realized that whole hours had passed without thinking about Nora. Grief doesn't always leave. Sometimes it just grows new rooms you don't have to walk through every day. A year later, I ran into Nora at a street fair. We were near a booth selling handmade candles that all smelled like weather. Rain on concrete, first frost, August porch. She looked older in the way all of us did after the year we'd had. Tired, softened at the edges. Humane. We said hello and stood there in the harmless sun. "How are you?" she asked. Not as a test, as a person. "Better," I said. "You?" She nodded. "Learning to be accountable," she said. I heard Hannah in the cadence and smiled. "I'm sorry," Nora added, "for the last time you say sorry when you both know it cannot change the artifact. Only its placement in the room." "I know," I said. "Me too." Not for cheating, never that. For the years we spent not saying small truths when they were still small. For the cracks we painted over because we loved the color of the wall. We didn't hug. We didn't promise to keep in touch. We chose the kind of kindness that ended in sunlight. People on Reddit always ask, how do you know when it's really over? Here's my answer. It's over when the version of you who stayed would be lesser than the version of you who leaves. It's over when your peace stops living in their pocket. It's over when you stop checking the door because you remember you changed the locks for a reason. Betrayal didn't kick down my door. It learned my house, my timings, my weak hinges, my net of trust, and it walked in quietly. That's the cruelty of it. That's also its inadvertent gift. It taught me to listen to the quiet parts again, the places where truth whispers before it screams. I am not the man I was when this began. I do not want to be. I make 2 coffees at 7:15 a.m. now because I like the ritual and because someday somebody else might sit at this table and say, "You good?" And I'll nod with a mouthful of toast and actually mean, yes. If you're in the middle of it, if you're screenshotting texts and measuring how late is too late, here's what I wish someone had told me sooner. Proof is a door, not a home. You don't have to live in the moment you found it. You get to walk through and build elsewhere. The floor will feel strange at first, and then one morning, you will wake up and wonder how you ever slept through so much noise. That will be the day you realize the roof over your head is new smaller. Lower, maybe, but it doesn't creak when the wind picks up. It holds, and you do too. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. It means a lot. New stories like this one are posted every single day, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss one. And if this story touched you, please give it a like. It really helps more people find our content.